These first two cantos of the poem, I always think they are like an overture to an opera or a symphony. In them, Aurobindo gives us this introduction, this symbolic introduction, the symbol dawn, the darkness before the dawn on this special day. And then in the second section, he introduces us to Savitri waking up on this day and what it is like for her waking up on the day when Shraddhavan must die, when she knows that this is the day. And in this second canto, Aurobindo introduces us to Savitri in more detail. But also we can say that from the poetic point of view, in these two cantos, he introduces the themes that are going to be worked out in the rest of the poem. So last week we saw Savitri, she has woken up, she's remembering her whole life, everything that has led up to this moment. And Aurobindo says, or he shows us, that she's passing through a moment of darkness, of anguish, an absolute supernatural darkness falls on man sometimes when he draws near to God. And this moment of darkness is the challenge which can bring forward the inner being. And he's explained to us that this is what Savitri has to do now. Her will, awake in her unborn element, in her immortal being, must cancel out the destiny of the mortal being, the destiny of the body. And we saw that the body is subject to the chain of consequences that binds everything in the material universe. But she must disrupt, dislodge, using the force of her soul, all that human past, because that is a block, an obstacle on the immortal's road. And then we have this very challenging, interesting sentence, a colloquy of the original gods meeting upon the borders of the unknown. Her soul's debate with embodied nothingness must be wrestled out on a dangerous, dim background. Her being must confront its formless cause. Against the universe, weigh its single self. On the bare peak, where self is alone with naught, and life has no sense, and love no place to stand, she must plead her case upon extinction's verge. In the world's death cave, uphold life's helpless claim and vindicate her right to be and love. These are not easy sentences to understand, but they give the key to the theme of the poem. He says, her Savitri soul must debate with embodied nothingness. This is referring to this figure of negativity, of death and destruction, whom she has to confront in the later books of the poem. And all this has to be wrestled out on a dangerous, dim background. And what she is standing for is life and love, the right for life and love to exist in this material universe where everything seems to be subject to death, to the force of entropy. So I will read on from there, from the last line at the bottom of page 12. Altered must be nature's harsh economy. Acquittance she must win from her past's bond, an old account of suffering exhaust. Strike out from time the soul's long compound debt and the heavy servitudes of the Karmic Gods, the slow revenge of unforgiving law, and the deep need of universal pain and hard sacrifice and tragic consequence. Out of a timeless barrier she must break, penetrate with her thinking depths the void's monstrous hush, look into the lonely eyes of immortal death, and with her nude spirit measure the infinite's night. The great and dolorous moment now was close. A mailed battalion marching to its doom, the last long days went by with heavy tramp, long but too soon to end, too soon to pass, too near the end. Alone amid the many faces loved, aware among unknowing happy hearts, her armored spirit kept watch upon the hours, listening for a foreseen tremendous step in the closed beauty of the inhuman wilds. A combatant in silent, dreadful lists, the world unknowing, for the world she stood. No helper had she, save the strength within. There was no witness of terrestrial eyes. The gods above and nature soul below were the spectators of that mighty strife. Around her were the austere sky-pointing hills and the green, murmurous, broad, deep-thoughted woods, muttered incessantly their muffled spell. A dense, magnificent, colored, self-wrapped life, draped in the leaves, vivid emerald monotone, and set with checkered sunbeams and blithe flowers, immured her destiny's secluded scene. There had she grown to the stature of her spirit. The genius of titanic silences, steeping her soul in its wide loneliness, had shown to her herself's bare reality and mated her with her environment. Its solitude greatened her human hours with a background of the eternal and unique. A force of spare, direct necessity reduced the heavy framework of man's days and his overburdening mass of outward needs to a first thin strip of simple animal wants. And the mighty wildness of the primitive earth and the brooding multitude of patient trees and the musing sapphire leisure of the sky and the solemn weight of the slowly passing months had left in her deep room for thought and God. Shall we start this side today? Yes.
Altered must be nature's harsh economy. Acquittance she must win from her past bond, an old account of suffering exhaust, strike out from time the soul's long compound debt, and the heavy servitudes of the Karmic Gods, the slow revenge of unforgiving law, and the deep need of universal pain, and hard sacrifice and wretched consequence.
Thank you. Altered must be nature's harsh economy. When we use this word economy in our normal everyday use, we're thinking about finance and how to balance income and expenditure. But nature has her own kind of economy, her inputs and her outputs. And here Sri Aurobindo is saying this whole balance of the way that nature pays for things has to be altered. This is a harsh economy. He's continuing the reference we had a little earlier to the idea of karmic consequence, that everything that happens to us in this life is the result, the outcome of something that has happened in the past. So she has to break out of that framework of action and reaction and consequences. She has to win acquittance. She has to escape from that account which is being kept, from her past's bond, that whole debt of the past. She has to get free of that. She has to exhaust, to bring to an end, to be completely finished with an old account of suffering. She has to strike out from time the soul's long compound debt. Compound debt is debt that keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because you don't only have to pay interest on the amount that you first borrowed, you have to pay interest on the interest. It goes on accumulating. And she has to become free from the heavy servitudes of the karmic gods, the cosmic powers who keep all these balances. There's also a kind of cosmic law that seems to be always taking revenge for things, but it doesn't do it immediately. It does it in a very slow, unforgiving way. And in this material universe, there seems to be a deep need of pain and hard sacrifice and tragic consequence. Savitri has to throw off this whole cosmic load. So we mentioned last week that Savitri is a divine incarnation. Why does she have this load of karma from the past? It's because she has come to free humanity from this chain of unforgiving law. And so she has taken on herself this human load. And at the top of page 12, Sri Aurobindo told us that only the unborn spirit's timeless power can lift the yoke imposed by birth in time. Savitri has taken birth in time with a mission, with a purpose. And so she's taken on her shoulders this heavy yoke, this load. And the only thing that can free her from that load is the timeless power of the unborn spirit, the immortal being, her transcendent being beyond time and space and consequence. He says, only the self that builds this figure of self, there's our transcendent being, our true, eternal and infinite individuality, that self builds this figure of self that we're wearing at the moment in time. And only that transcendent self has the power to wipe out, to erase the fixed, interminable line that joins these changing names, these numberless lives, these new oblivious personalities, this chain of action and consequence that keeps still hiding, lurking in our conscious acts, in the things that we do. We think we are conscious why we do them, but they're carrying with them this trail of old forgotten thoughts and deeds. We are carrying with us this legacy, something that has come to us from the past, this legacy of our buried selves, the selves that we've been in the past, That's a burdensome heirship. Sometimes you are happy to receive a legacy. Some remote relative passes away and leaves you something, you may be very pleased about it. But it's not always like that. Sometimes you can be left with a legacy of debt or commitments. That's a burdensome heirship, no? So she has to disown that, no? The body and the soul, the surface soul, accept it blindly. But Savitri is going to have to alter that whole economy of nature. Yes, Narendra.
This need of universal pain, where are we from that? Is it Karmic Gods revenge he is referring to again?
We can read this line in two ways. In the universe there's a need for pain that is discussed in part of the poem. No? What is the need for pain in order for us to progress? But there's also the need of the pain. The pain makes demands on us and is making a demand on her. No? So these are things that she has to become free of. She's come and taken on herself this load on behalf of humanity. She must get rid of it. Slava, you would read?
Out of endless prayer, she must pray. In trade is the eating depth of joy's monstrous hush. Look into the lonely eyes of immortal death, and with her new spirit usual in infinite night.
The infinite's night, yes. So in order to do that, in order to win acquittance from the past's bond, she is going to have to break out of a timeless barrier, the barrier which is limiting this universe. She must go beyond time. And she is with her thinking depths, with her conscious inner being, she's going to have to penetrate into the monstrous hush, the silence of the void, the emptiness. We could say the non-existence. She's going to have to look into the eyes of immortal death, this cosmic power of death and disintegration. She's going to have to look it straight in the face, no? And with her own spirit, completely naked and unprotected, she's going to have to measure the night of the infinite darkness. Is she vast enough to fill that, to face that? So this is looking forward to a kind of prophetic remark about the end of the poem, where we see her doing just that. Alice?
The great and dolorous moment now was close. A mailed battalion marching to its doom. The last long days went by with heavy tramp long, but too soon to pass, too near the end.
Yes. So this great and dolorous moment, the painful moment when Satyavan must die, she knows that that is close now. She's waking up in the morning, but in the course of the day, that great and dolorous moment is going to come. And she's been experiencing the days, the last days, passing like an army or part of an army, a battalion, a company of soldiers, heavily armed, but knowing that they are marching to their doom, that they are not going to survive this battle. These last long days went by with heavy tramp, like despairing soldiers on their way to their deaths. So they go, those days pass slowly, as days do when we are waiting for something, when we are expecting something to come. But still, for her, although they pass slowly, they pass too quickly, because these are the last precious days before the end. Tone.
Alone amidst the many faces love, aware among unknowing happy hearts, her armored spirit kept watch upon the hours, listening for a foreseen tremendous step in the close beauty, the inhuman wilds.
Yes. So there are people living around her. She's with Satyavan, she's with his parents. There are other people, but she is alone amid those many loved faces. She's the only one who is aware. They are unknowing, and because they are unknowing, they are happy. But her spirit is armored. She has to keep all her strength and courage together, keeping watch on the hours, listening for that tremendous step that's foreseen. It has been foreseen that death will come. So she's listening for that step, approaching in this closed beauty of the forest, this inhuman wilderness. This is not a place which is dominated by human presence. It's a place where nature dominates, the nature of trees and animals. The closed beauty, it's enclosed. So this is following on from in the previous canto, where he speaks about how she's alone, this dark foreknowledge on page 8 separated her from all the people around her. She's keeping this foreknowledge of death and grief within her, not sharing it with anyone. Yes.
I have a question about line 84.
Yes.
If I heard well, you said they were happy because they were unknown.
They don't know.
And is that relationship there? Is it because they are unknown
Yes, they are. They can be happy.
You cannot be happy if you are known.
No, it doesn't mean in general, but if you know that something dreadful is going to happen tomorrow, then it's difficult to be happy. But if you don't know, you can go on being happy. Yes?
Shraddhavan, will you tell about foreknowledge of death? Is in book 7?
It's in book 7.
Yeah.
The ordeal of the foreknowledge of death. Yeah. Canto 1 of book 7. But with Sri Aurobindo, as I said, this is like the overture. Here already he's giving us a hint of what he's going to develop in more detail later on. Here he's showing us this anguish that's in Savitri because of the foreknowledge of death, how difficult it is to bear. Dana Lakshmi.
The combatant in silent, dreadful bliss, the word unknown for the word she stood. No helper had she saved the strength within. There was no witness of terrestrial eyes. The gods above and nature soul below were the spectators of that mighty strife.
So Savitri is a combatant, and she's there in the lists. It's an unusual word, but Sri Aurobindo uses it 4 times in the poem. It has nothing to do with shopping lists. It is an area that's marked out for a single combat between 2 champions. At one time it used to happen that if there were 2 armies and they saw that they are fairly evenly matched, then they would agree that yes, we'll mark out a space and our best fighters, the 2 champions, will fight, and the victory of the battle depends on who wins. So it's a space for a single combat between 2 champions. So that's what Savitri is facing, this combat. She is the champion for earth and men, for life and love, and she is having to face the opponent, death. So it says that she's a combatant there. Here she is in this list, in this space that's been marked out for it. She's the champion for the whole world. She's standing for the world. But the world doesn't know anything about it. Yes? And she doesn't have any helper or any supporter. She's all alone. The only thing that she has is her inner strength, and he gives it a capital S. There was no witness of terrestrial eyes. Normally there will be a crowd of witnesses, the supporters on both sides, but here there are no eyes, there are no human eyes, earthly eyes to watch this great contest. The gods are watching, and nature is watching. They are the spectators of this mighty strife, this conflict, this battle which is the subject, the topic of the whole poem. Mila.
Around her were the austere sky pointed hills, and the green murderers rode deep through the woods, who mutter incessantly their mortal strife. A dense, magnificent color, self-wrapped life, wrapped in the leaves' vivid emerald monotony, and set with checkered sunbeams and bright flowers, immune the destiny's secluded scene.
So now he's showing us the scenery where this drama is being played out. Surrounding her are the austere sky-pointing hills, the Himalayas, with nothing growing. And then closer there are these forests, these broad woods, which seem to be in a deep state of contemplation, deep thoughted. But they are wonderfully green, and there's always a sound in those woods. They are muttering incessantly. They are muffled spell. It's a mantra. They are chanting. We can't hear clearly what they're saying, but they don't stop. It goes on all the time.
Spell is a non-linear spell. Spell has clarity, no?
It can be negative or positive. You can be spellbound by the beauty of a young girl. No, it's something that absorbs your attention. It's something enchanting. It creates an enchantment. So these surroundings, it's dense. The trees are packed closely together. The color is magnificent, and the life there is inward turned, self-wrapped, not looking outwards to the rest of the world. It's as if it's wearing a garment. It's draped in this vivid emerald monotone, the single green color of the leaves. But here and there are this emerald monotone, like jewels in a setting. There are checkered sunbeams. Checkered means they are alternating light and shade. It happens particularly under trees. Now when I look out into the garden, I can see a checkered shade. There's the shade, and then there's the bare earth, which is reflecting the sunlight. The shade and the sun together. So the sunbeams come through, create this checkered effect. The light, the golden light. And blithe flowers, happy flowers, cheerful flowers. All this is walling in Savitri's scene. She's secluded, in a way protected, cut off from the life of the rest of the world. Kamala.
There had she grown to the stature of a bird, the genius of the giants, silences, speaking her soul in its wide golden vessel. Had shown to her herself their reality, and mentored with her environment. Its solitude greatened our human power, with the background of the eternal and unique.
Yes. So it's as if she's been protected in this secluded spot. And in this place, here she has grown to the stature of her spirit, the full height and strength of her spirit. And this landscape, the vastness of this landscape, vastness and the impersonality of it, has helped in her to grow to the stature of her spirit. This genius, this spirit of titanic silences, superhuman silences of the forest and the hills. It has steeped her soul in its wide loneliness, steeping. If you want to dye some cloth, you will dissolve the color in water, and then you put your cloth in and steep it for a long time so that the cloth takes in the color. And so steeping her soul, her whole soul has become soaked and filled with these stupendous silences. And this has shown to her herself's bare reality and mated her with her environment. She has become vast and silent and powerful like that environment surrounding her. So this alludes precisely to Book 7, to that yoga of Savitri, which is described there in 7 cantos. That solitude, there are no strangers coming. Whoever is there, they are alone. The solitude of that environment greatened her human hours, gives a larger dimension to the experience there because of this background of things that are unchanging, special, soul, alone. Joel.
Force of spare direct necessity reduce the heavy framework of man's days and his overburdening mass of outward needs to a first thin strip of simple animal wants and the mighty wideness of the primitive earth and the brooding multitude of patient trees, and the musing sapphire leisure of the sky, and the solemn weight of the slowly passing month had left her deep room for thought and God.
Yes. So there's something about that very, very simple life that they are forced to live there in the forest. There's a force of spare, direct necessity. Just the things that you need to stay alive. Direct needs, nothing superfluous, nothing additional. So human days are often not like that. We have some kind of heavy framework, all the things we have to do, all the things we have to look after, just to keep going. No. But in the forest, that heavy framework of man's days gets reduced, thinned down just to the most basic needs, a first thin strip of simple animal wants. Simple food, water, sleep. Simple animal wants. So this is taking her out of the ordinary human life to something much more basic and essential. And then at the same time, there's this vastness the mighty wildness of the primitive earth, of earth not affected by human presence, not disturbed in any way. This brooding multitude of patient trees. They are standing, growing patiently there, and it's as if they're in a kind of trance of concentration, brooding. And there's the beautiful blue sky above, the musing sapphire leisure of the sky. The sky doesn't have to toil and struggle. It's immensely peaceful, but it's also as if it's musing, deeply indrawn. It's musing, and it's this glorious sapphire color, which in itself seems to correspond to higher levels of consciousness. And then the rhythm of time, the solemn weight of the slowly passing months, 12 months. The months pass slowly in that environment. All this has allowed to Savitri's inner being, deep room, lots of space, lots of possibility for deep thought and God to feel and experience the presence of the divine. We'll stop there for today. Altered must be nature's harsh economy. Acquittance she must win from her past's bond, an old account of suffering exhaust. Strike out from time the soul's long compound debt, and the heavy servitudes of the Karmic Gods, the slow revenge of unforgiving law, and the deep need of universal pain and hard sacrifice and tragic consequence. Out of a timeless barrier she must break, penetrate with her thinking depths the void's monstrous hush. Look into the lonely eyes of immortal death, and with her nude spirit measure the infinite's night. The great and dolorous moment now was close. A mailed battalion marching to its doom, the last long days went by with heavy tramp. Long, but too soon to pass, too near the end. Alone, amid the many faces loved, aware among unknowing happy hearts, her armored spirit kept watch upon the hours, listening for a foreseen tremendous step in the closed beauty of the inhuman wilds. A combatant in silent, dreadful lists, the world unknowing, for the world she stood. No helper had she, save the strength within. There was no witness of terrestrial eyes. The gods above and nature's soul below were the spectators of that mighty strife. Around her were the austere sky-pointing hills, and the green, murmurous, broad, deep-thoughted woods muttered incessantly their muffled spell. A dense, magnificent, coloured, self-wrapped life, draped in the leaves' vivid emerald monotone, and set with checkered sunbeams and blithe flowers, immured her destiny's secluded scene. There had she grown to the stature of her spirit, the genius of titanic silences, steeping her soul in its wide loneliness, had shown to her herself's bare reality, and mated her with her environment. Its solitude greatened her human hours with a background of the eternal and unique. A force of spare, direct necessity reduced the heavy framework of man's days and his overburdening mass of outward needs to a first thin strip of simple animal wants. And the mighty wildness of the primitive earth, and the brooding multitude of patient trees, and the musing sapphire leisure of the sky, and the solemn weight of the slowly passing months, had left in her deep room for thought and God.